thought it was just a mistake, a simple misunderstanding, a moment of carelessness. But what they didn't realize was that their decision, one careless act, would change everything forever. They left her behind, thinking they'd be back soon, thinking she'd be okay. But what happened next? No one could have ever imagined, and when the consequences came crashing down, they would come to regret it more than anything else in their lives. Life has a strange way of teaching lessons. Sometimes it whispers warnings in the wind. Other times it strikes like a thunderstorm, relentless and unforgiving. This story, it's one of those storms, a moment of neglect, a decision made in haste, and a regret that would haunt them forever. Let me take you back to where it all began. I've noticed only 98% of you who watch haven't subscribed. Come on, guys, show some love and support. Thanks a bunch to those who have already subscribed. It was supposed to be a family trip, one they had planned for months. Suitcases packed, excitement in the air, a road trip filled with laughter and the promise of unforgettable memories. My parents, my siblings, my uncles, my aunts, and my little daughter Emily. She was only 6 years old, curious, full of life, and the kind of child who saw magic in everything. We were heading to a cabin deep in the woods, a perfect getaway from the chaos of the city. The cars were loaded, the countdown had begun, and in the rush of last-minute packing, no one noticed the one thing they should have. Emily wasn't in the car. The convoy of vehicles took off down the road, the hum of engines and laughter filling the air. It wasn't until nearly an hour later, deep into the journey, that someone asked, "Where's Emily?" Silence. Stomachs dropped. Hearts pounded. At first they thought she was in another car, maybe sitting quietly, lost in her own little world. But when the calls went around, reality sank in like a stone tossed into a still lake. They had left her behind. A wave of chaos erupted. Phones dialed frantically. Voices shook with fear. "Turn around! Now!" The tires screeched as cars made abrupt U-turns, speeding back toward the house. Every second felt like an eternity. What if she had wandered off? What if someone had taken her? What if... No one wanted to think about the worst, but what they didn't know was that Emily wasn't where they had left her. She had woken up from her nap and stepped outside, looking for the family. The silence confused her. Where was everyone? At first she thought it was a game. Hide and seek, maybe? A surprise? She called out, "Mommy? Daddy?" Nothing. Minutes passed, then more. Then fear began to creep in. The house, once familiar, now felt enormous and empty. Shadows stretched longer. The sky darkened. She didn't know what to do. So she did the only thing she could think of. She started walking. By the time we got back to the house, Emily was nowhere to be found. Panic turned to terror. Calls to the police were made. Neighbors were questioned. Search parties were formed. We shouted her name into the wind, our voices cracking with desperation. The woods behind the house loomed dark and eerie. Had she gone in there? We didn't want to think about what could be lurking in those woods at night. Every parent's worst nightmare was unfolding before our eyes. My mother collapsed in sobs, blaming herself. My father, usually strong and composed, looked like a ghost of himself. The rest of the family? Silent. The weight of guilt pressing down on every single one of us. How could we have been so careless? No one had an answer. Meanwhile, Emily had ventured into the woods, hoping to find help. She wasn't scared at first, but as the darkness wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, she started to cry. Every sound felt threatening. Every rustle in the leaves was a monster waiting to jump out. Then she saw something, a light in the distance. It was an old man, a stranger, walking with a lantern. He had lived in a cabin nearby for years, keeping to himself, away from the world. He found Emily curled up beneath a tree, shaking and cold. He didn't speak much, but his eyes were kind. He wrapped her in a warm blanket and gave her food. He sat with her through the night, waiting for the first light of dawn, and when morning came, so did the search party. The moment we saw Emily, relief poured over us like a crashing wave. Tears, hugs, whispered apologies. She was safe, but we knew things would never be the same. The old man simply nodded, turning to walk away. But before he could, I stopped him. Thank you, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He looked at me, smiled, and said words I will never forget. Take care of what matters before it's too late. That day changed everything. We had been too caught up in our own excitement, too distracted by our own plans, to notice what truly mattered. It was a mistake, one that could have cost us everything. We never made that mistake again. Life moves fast, but some things should never be rushed. Take care of the people you love. Never assume, never take them for granted. Because one small moment of neglect can change everything. And before you go, if this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love gripping, real-life stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means the world, and it helps bring more incredible stories to life. This was more than just a story. It was a wake-up call, one we will never forget. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and most importantly, stay connected to those who matter most. Until next time, take care.